In the future, humanity will achieve immortality through technological progress. However, the ability to die by choice will become a rare privilege, granted only to a select few. News broadcasts around the world report a historic milestone. Setsuko Kira, at the age of 169, has become the oldest person in history. In celebration of this extraordinary event, festivities erupt worldwide. A massive 169-layer cake is prepared, and thousands of spectators watch as Kira blows out the candles, making her wishes for the coming year. This day marks the most significant media event of the year, drawing an astonishing 4 billion viewers, 3 times the audience of the FIFA World Cup final. Medical examinations reveal that Kira's health is flawless, showing no signs of deterioration or abnormalities. A news anchor proclaims that this moment symbolizes humanity's victory over death. The streets are alive with celebration, music, fireworks, and joyful cheers fill the air. Amid the revelry, a mysterious figure in a jellyfish costume moves calmly through the crowd. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit bar, a man engages in conversation with an unfamiliar woman. She playfully attempts to guess his age, but keeps getting it wrong. Eventually, he reveals that he is 119 years old and, for the first time in over a century, has decided to change careers. Intrigued, she asks about his dream job, but he deflects the question, instead making a bold declaration that their intimacy is inevitable. Maybe not today, he says, but in a world where 2 immortals exist among mortals, the odds of avoiding each other forever are nearly zero. Amused by his confidence, the woman suggests skipping the wait, and they leave the bar together. After parting ways, the man heads to a building marked with an infinity symbol. Upon entering, he inquires about available slots and, after receiving confirmation, proceeds to the next room. The attendant, reviewing his information, reminds him that regeneration is not magic, it must be done regularly. Noticing that the client is slightly intoxicated, the attendant refuses service and asks him to leave. However, the man simply pulls out a gun and an ID, forcing compliance. The regeneration procedure begins. Elsewhere, the figure in the jellyfish costume sits on a beach, gazing at the waves. As they step closer to the water, they notice something floating corpses. Back at the regeneration facility, the attendant informs Darius that the procedure was successful. Just then, Darius's phone buzzes with 12 new messages. Urgently gathering his belongings, he rushes to a crime scene where he finds several bodies. As he examines them, he notices a peculiar tattoo, 2 dots inked onto one victim's shoulder. At headquarters, an officer reports that all the victims were shot in the temple at close range. The deceased, 3 young women and 4 men, aged 18 to 23, had all been reported missing. One of them is identified as Enoch Ritt. Upon further inspection, officers recognize the 2-dot tattoo as the emblem of a long-dormant suicide cult known as Saul. A decade ago, this group orchestrated a mass suicide at the Olympic Stadium, recruiting members as young as 12. Though the cult had seemingly disbanded, someone has revived it. The investigation is now in full force. Officers Asram and Lecky are assigned to focus on Enoch Ritt, while the rest of the team works on identifying the other victims. The detectives visit Ritt's mother, who is informed of her son's death by a mourner. While she grieves, officers search Enoch's room, uncovering a stash of drugs. Despite their questioning, the mother insists she never noticed anything unusual about her son's behavior. As they leave, Darius receives an update. Before his death, Enoch had made a call to someone named Kenji Mandu. Recognizing the name, Darius orders an immediate interrogation. Kenji, initially uncooperative, denies involvement, insisting that he only sells pills to older people. But Darius sees through the lie and threatens to bring in narcotics control. Finally, Kenji confesses Enoch had undergone testing months ago and discovered he was incompatible with regeneration. Since then, the fear of death haunted him. Meanwhile, another breakthrough emerges. Lei, one of the officers, uncovers the whereabouts of Christa Novak, the sole survivor of the Olympic Stadium mass suicide. She is currently in a psychiatric facility. Darius immediately requests her case files. That night, as Darius sits at home with his wife, a television broadcast discusses the rising number of suicide attempts among the youth. Later, while reviewing Kristen's case files, he notices something alarming. She, too, bears the 2-dot tattoo. The next day, Kristen is in her facility, caught in a trivial dispute with her roommates when she is suddenly informed that she has a visitor. Meeting Darius, she is confronted with photos from the latest suicide scene. He informs her that Saul has resurfaced, and because of her past affiliation, she could be the key to stopping them. He offers her a deal, return to Attenberg, infiltrate her old contacts, and in exchange, he will reduce her sentence by 3 years. After a brief moment of hesitation, she agrees, but requests a private room in the psychiatric facility instead of a reduced sentence. Darius and Kristen embark on their mission. Upon arrival, Kristen is given a chemical indicator to drink which is undetectable, yet allowing the police to see and hear everything she experiences. Once the technology is confirmed to work, she is handed a phone and sent on her mission. Wandering through the city, Kristen stumbles upon a building with a sign that reads, Church of the Beatitudes. She hesitates, gathering her thoughts before stepping inside. There, an elderly woman explains that their members reject regeneration, choosing to live naturally with authentic experiences. Sensing Kristen's uncertainty, she invites her to a farewell ceremony for one of their own. The entire community will be there, she says. If you're interested, leave your contact details. Later, Darius takes Kristen to her parents' house, where, as a rare exception, she is allowed to stay the night. Her parents are overjoyed to see her and present her with a gift. When she opens the box, she finds a test. Her parents had taken it for her, confirming that she is compatible with regeneration. Unmoved by their gesture, Kristen turns her attention to their new pet, a jellyfish. Walking to the aquarium, she gazes at it and murmurs, "It's beautiful, quiet, obedient." Without warning, she pulls the jellyfish from the water and slams it onto the table. "This is the kind of child you need," she tells them coldly. The next day, Kristen attends the farewell ceremony. A large crowd gathers, weeping as they bid farewell to a man lying on a ceremonial pedestal. As emotions run high, Kristen suddenly notices a familiar tattoo on the shoulder of a young woman in the crowd. At the same time, Darius and his team receive a cryptic message, "We can help you." Their plan is working. As the investigation deepens, Kristen finds herself drawn into a world darker than she imagined. The truth behind Saul's revival is far more sinister than anyone anticipated. And the deeper she goes, the more she begins to suspect that what happened at the Olympic Stadium was only the beginning. Christa pressed Lonus about the signal and who was waiting for it, but he evaded the question, offering her pills instead. Hesitating, she took them, triggering hallucinations, including N's gravestone. When she regained consciousness, she was on a bus to an unfamiliar location. At the police station, she relayed her encounter with Lonus, whom Lay identified as Leonard Ader, the sole survivor of a mass suicide, having missed the signal. A lobotomy left him with severe cognitive impairments, and after the stadium incident, his parents abandoned him. Lonus, seemingly lost, had been with a teenage girl and spoke cryptically about suicides, recruiters, and a mysterious signal, hinting at a larger plan. That night, Lonus abducted Christa. Blindfolded, she was driven for nearly 40 minutes to an eerie, abandoned building near the sea. He led her to a bar where underage kids danced and gave her another pill. The rest was a blur. The next day, Lecky analyzed the drug. It was a methamphetamine designed to induce near-death experiences. Meanwhile, police raided an abandoned coastal nursing home, uncovering encrypted records, Avenir Foundation party flyers, and rat-filled cages. Lonus had been eating them. Christa agreed to decrypt the files. At home, she found a flash drive labeled Null, containing a video of N being coerced into accepting death. At the end, he repeated, "Only actions don't lie. Only actions speak." Overcome with emotion, she retrieved a hidden gun, but her mother intervened before she could use it. Meanwhile, Darius and Lecky set up surveillance at an Avenir Foundation event. Bertie, the leader, was wary of police presence, but Darius assured him they wouldn't interfere unless necessary. Just then, urgent news arrived about Christa. At her home, her parents showed Darius the gun, arguing she should be placed in a mental facility. Instead, he took her to his own home, where she met his wife and learned about his past, how he lost a son during the Great Epidemic. That night, the Avenir event was underway. Darius and his team monitored the scene until they spotted a suspicious man. When confronted, he fled and, realizing he was cornered, leapt to his death. The police later discovered the victim was actually a woman, Sam Ann Wangan, a frequent visitor of Avenir. Darius confronted Bertie, who claimed not to know her. Just then, Bertie's assistant delivered bad news. The government was shutting down the center. Enraged, Bertie lashed out at the authorities, accusing them of ignoring the problem just as they had 10 years ago. "How many more deaths before you start paying attention?" he demanded. Christa watched Bertie's broadcast, condemning the shutdown as youth oppression. Chillingly, he ended with the same phrase from the Null video. "Only actions don't lie. Only actions speak." The next morning, Darius went for a run before announcing that Christa was returning to the center. His wife protested. Christa spent her days at the station and nights in detention, but Darius ignored her concerns. At the station, he learned that 270 people had gone missing, potential rebels against the system. Their discussion was interrupted by Enoch Ritt's mother, demanding answers about her son's suicide, but the officers refused to engage. Meanwhile, Christa was assigned a desk at the station. Her task? Decrypt the files from the nursing home. Lesky and Darius visit the Turritopsis Dracula Jellyfish Museum, learning that biologists August and Paula Stern first documented the creature's regenerative ability nearly 80 years ago. There, they meet Simon, the uncle of one of the deceased girls, but he has little information. After a call, Darius and Lesky rush to the hospital, where they find Lonis in the morgue, speaking to Sammy's body about setting it free. He's caught and taken in for questioning but refuses to talk. Meanwhile, Christa decrypts records revealing cryptic messages about the external world, which suggest an impending transformation rather than death. Later, Christa seeks a gun from Lana in exchange for drugs, but Lana warns her that killing is harder than planning. Darius interrogates Lonis, sharing his past struggles with a deadly virus and his survival through experimental regeneration. But Lonis dismisses him as a ghost speaking to the living. That night, Darius's wife, Bat, watches a news report about an unknown sea creature found by a ship crew. She calls Darius to reveal her pregnancy, but his reaction is cold. The next morning, a man informs the police that missing girl Lynn Gonzalez spoke of the external world and was last seen at a bus station with other minors. While investigating, Lonis is unexpectedly transferred to court, but is shot in the head by Enoch R's mother, who also wounds an officer, Ayla. As Ayla recovers, Christa and Lesky grow closer, and she gains permission to leave town briefly. She meets a contact to buy a gun, but is instead offered a remotely controlled strangulation collar, which she accepts. Sneaking into Virgil Barry's home, she attempts to use the device on him, but is interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Meanwhile, Darius receives shocking news. Lynn Gonzalez has been found. Arriving at the morgue, he is stunned to see not a human body, but an enormous sea mollusk-like creature lying before him. Ad Vitam is one of those rare shows that benefit from a second viewing. The last 2 episodes are extraordinary pieces of television, with episode 5 presenting the perspective of the cult leader, Karen, Niels Schneider, who becomes Virgil. Names are significant in the show, prompting us to reevaluate preceding events and affording some insight into and perhaps even sympathy for the character. Ad Vitam pays the ultimate accolade to the viewer by rarely explaining anything. We have to work out for ourselves the effects of longevity on humans, and there are many. The show's real strength lies in the dynamic between the 2 central characters. One is the great number of disaffected young people since jobs can be held almost eternally by their elders. Also, the age of majority has been increased to 30. We see brief allusions to a pending referendum on strict population control, which is passed with 88% of votes in the last episode. Children seem to be an avoidable nuisance, and there is little need for heirs and successors in a world in which death has become an anomaly. The prospect of living forever is appealing, but the series shows us what the greatest danger of such a prospect is: boredom. The ending is both horrific and hopeful.